The airplane was cruising quietly above a sea of clouds when suddenly a man collapsed in the aisle. At 35,000 feet in the air, panic spreads faster than fire. A flight attendant screamed for help. Passengers turned their heads, whispering, staring, but no one moved. The man on the floor, well-dressed, pale, and barely breathing, was one of the richest men in the world, but at that moment wealth meant nothing, because the only person who stepped forward was the poorest man on the plane. Before we continue this emotional story, take a second to like this video, share it with someone who believes kindness can change lives, comment where you're watching from, and subscribe to the channel if you believe in second chances and the power of human compassion. Daniel Carter had almost missed the flight. He had been running through the crowded terminal, with a worn backpack slung over his shoulder, and a small hand clutching his sleeve. His 6-year-old daughter Lily had tried her best to keep up, her tiny sneakers squeaking against the polished airport floor. Daniel's face carried the exhaustion of someone who had been fighting life for far too long. Dark circles rested under his eyes, and his once neat hair had grown messy from months of stress. Just a year earlier, Daniel had a decent job as a warehouse supervisor. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid enough for rent, groceries, and Lily's school supplies. Then the warehouse closed unexpectedly, leaving hundreds unemployed overnight. Since then, Daniel had worked whatever jobs he could find, delivery driver, night cleaner, construction helper, but none lasted long. Still, no matter how hard life became, Daniel refused to let Lily feel the weight of their struggles. The plane ticket they were holding was the result of months of saving coins and skipping meals. Lily's grandmother, Daniel's mother, had fallen seriously ill in another state. Doctors weren't sure how much time she had left, and Lily had begged to see her. Daniel knew he couldn't deny her that. So there they were, squeezed into economy seats near the back of the plane. Lily pressed her nose against the window, amazed by the endless sky outside. Daniel watched her quietly, his tired heart finding a moment of peace. For the first time in weeks, he allowed himself to breathe. That peaceful moment shattered halfway through the flight. The disturbance started with a sudden commotion near the business class section. A tall man in an expensive suit staggered into the aisle, gripping his chest. His face turned an alarming shade of gray before he collapsed heavily onto the carpeted floor. Gasps rippled across the cabin. Flight attendants rushed toward him, kneeling beside his unmoving body. One of them spoke urgently over the intercom, asking if any medical professionals were on board. Silence. Dozens of passengers avoided eye contact. Some looked nervous, others simply froze. Daniel felt his chest tighten. He recognized the signs immediately. Years ago, before life had taken a harsher turn, Daniel had worked as an emergency medical technician. It had been his dream job, saving lives, helping strangers, being there when people needed hope the most. But after Lily's mother died during childbirth, Daniel had been forced to quit the demanding schedule to raise his daughter alone. Eventually, financial pressures pushed him out of the medical field completely. Still, the knowledge never left him. And now someone's life depended on it. Daniel gently asked Lily to stay in her seat and quickly moved down the aisle. Passengers watched skeptically as a man in faded jeans and worn shoes knelt beside the fallen passenger. Some clearly doubted him, but Daniel ignored the stares. His hands moved with calm precision as he checked the man's pulse. Weak, irregular, dangerously slow. Daniel's heart pounded, but his voice remained steady as he directed the flight attendants. He asked for the plane's medical kit, oxygen tank, and space around the patient. Within seconds, Daniel began chest compressions. The entire plane seemed to hold its breath. 30 compressions, 2 breaths, again, and again. Sweat rolled down Daniel's forehead as the minutes stretched unbearably long. His arms burned, but he didn't stop. Every movement carried years of training, instinct, and determination. Somewhere in the cabin, Lily watched her father with wide eyes, not fully understanding what was happening but sensing the urgency. Then suddenly, the man coughed, a weak, fragile sound, but a miracle in the quiet cabin. A collective sigh of relief swept through the plane. Daniel continued monitoring the man carefully, helping stabilize his breathing until the color slowly returned to his face. The oxygen mask helped, but everyone knew the situation was still critical. The man who had collapsed was none other than Victor Langston, a billionaire technology investor known across the world. His face had appeared on magazine covers and business channels countless times, but right now, he looked small, vulnerable, and human, and the only reason he was alive was the quiet man kneeling beside him. The flight attendants thanked Daniel repeatedly, their voices trembling with relief. One of them asked for his name so they could report the incident properly. Daniel simply nodded politely. Then he walked back to his seat beside Lily. For the rest of the flight, he stayed quiet, holding his daughter's hand while the cabin slowly returned to normal. But the story didn't end there. When the plane finally landed, paramedics rushed on board and carefully carried Victor Langston out on a stretcher. Reporters and airport staff soon filled the terminal after hearing the news that the billionaire had suffered a medical emergency mid-flight. Everyone wanted to know who had saved him. But Daniel Carter was already gone. He slipped through the airport crowd with Lily, carrying the same worn backpack he had boarded with. There were no interviews, no introductions, no attempts to be recognized. He simply disappeared into the busy streets outside. 2 days later, Victor Langston woke up in a private hospital suite. The doctors told him something that shook him deeply. If that passenger hadn't acted within those critical minutes, his heart would have stopped permanently. Someone had saved his life. Victor immediately ordered his team to find the man. At first it seemed impossible. The flight had over 200 passengers, and the airline only had partial records of who had helped. But Victor Langston was not a man used to accepting impossibility. Security footage from the airport finally revealed Daniel leaving with Lily. Within hours, Victor's team began searching. What they discovered stunned him. Daniel Carter was living in a tiny one-bedroom apartment on the edge of the city. He worked temporary construction jobs and struggled to pay rent each month. Yet despite everything, neighbors described him the same way: kind, quiet, and endlessly devoted to his daughter. Victor sat in silence after reading the report. A poor man had saved a billionaire's life and asked for nothing in return. Meanwhile, Daniel had no idea anyone was looking for him. He was sitting beside his mother's hospital bed, holding Lily in his arms as machines softly beeped in the background. Life was still fragile, uncertain, and difficult, but Daniel wasn't thinking about the plane. To him, he had simply done what anyone should do: help someone who needed it. If this story is touching your heart so far, pause for a moment and comment the word kindness below. It helps spread stories like this to more people who need hope today. Weeks passed. Daniel eventually returned home and resumed the routine of surviving day by day, until one quiet afternoon a black car pulled up outside his apartment building. Neighbors peeked through their windows as a sharply dressed man stepped out and walked toward Daniel's door. When Daniel opened it, he froze in surprise. Standing there was Victor Langston himself. The billionaire looked far healthier now, but his eyes carried deep gratitude. Daniel tried to speak, confused about why such an important man would come to his small home. Victor simply smiled. He didn't come with cameras, reporters, or publicity. He came with something far more meaningful: respect. Victor had spent his entire life building companies, managing billions, and negotiating deals across the world. But in all his success, he had rarely encountered someone who helped purely out of kindness. Daniel had expected nothing: not money, not recognition, not even a thank you. That realization changed something inside Victor. In the months that followed, Victor quietly helped Daniel return to the medical field he once loved. He arranged training refreshers, certifications, and a stable job as a paramedic supervisor in a modern emergency center. Daniel initially resisted the help, but Victor insisted on one simple reason: the world needed more people like him. Lily also received a scholarship for school, ensuring she would never have to grow up carrying the same hardships her father faced. But the most powerful moment came a year later. Daniel stood in an ambulance uniform again, responding to emergencies just like he once had. The feeling of purpose returned, stronger than ever. And somewhere in the city, Victor Langston continued running his empire. But he never forgot the man who saved him in the sky. Because sometimes the greatest heroes aren't rich, famous, or powerful. Sometimes they're just a tired single father sitting quietly in the back of an airplane, ready to help when no one else will. Before this story ends, take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who believes in humanity, and subscribe to the channel for more stories that remind us how powerful kindness can be. And tell me in the comments, would you have stepped forward like Daniel did? Because one small act of courage can change 2 lives forever. And sometimes, the person who saves a billionaire turns out to be the one who truly saves the world's faith in humanity.